Brian Lehrer on WNYC, once a month for a year on The Brian Lehrer Show. We started last month. We're taking some time to pay attention to one of the most important, if often overlooked, parts of the city and surrounding areas, the parts that are not man-made, the plants and animals that sustain us. Last month, we talked about some of the changes going on in trees as spring gets underway, and today we take a look at the changes spring means for animals with part one of a two-part look at spring migrations this month and next month, because not only do birds migrate this time of year, but so do fish. What? And other water creatures too. And that's where we focus today. So we're joined for this by Chris Bowser, an estuary educator coordinator for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation with Cornell's Water Resource Institute, and by our guest throughout this series, Marielle Anzelone, urban botanist and ecologist and founder of New York City Wildflower Week. Welcome back to both of you.
Hey, so great to be here. I am so happy that you are focusing on some of the incredible natural wonders of our beautiful city.
And we thank Marielle for the idea. And I welcome you back, Chris, because you were here a few years ago, maybe a few of our listeners remember, to talk about a species that's very much part of this story today, eels. And last time you even brought a jar of what are called glass eels with you. Can you tell us about American eels and their spring migration?
I absolutely can. Right now, as we speak, the migration is happening right now. So there is a beautiful aquatic fish species, the American eel, Anguilla rostrata, that lives throughout the harbor, throughout the Hudson, and really throughout all of the waterways of the East Coast, from the Caribbean to Canada. And in the spring, at least in New York, the baby American eels, which are nicknamed glass eels, are on their migration from where they hatched in the Atlantic Ocean and the Sargasso Sea between Bermuda and Puerto Rico. They're now a year old, and this is the time in their lives where they're transitioning from that saltwater ocean creature to this coastal fish that will become the eel that many of us are familiar with if we've gone fishing or netting or we've just seen eels. But right now is when that spring arrival of the baby glass eels is just coming in, and they're arriving here by the thousands and thousands every single day.
Listeners, any calls for our guests about spring migrations, the water edition? If you have firsthand experience with glass eels or other migratory fish, or the horseshoe crabs that we're about to talk about, we're inviting your texts or calls. I don't know if anybody has anything on this particular sliver of New York life. 212-433 WNYC, 212-433-9692. Call or text. And like last month and throughout the series, we invite you to post your pictures of seasonal change, in this case, waterborne migration, to your Instagram stories. Post them to your Instagram stories and tag us at Brian Lehrer Show. Use the hashtag BLWild as you tag us at Brian Lehrer Show on your Instagram stories. All right, Marielle, horseshoe crabs.
Yes. Well, we love a horseshoe crab. Before we get into horseshoe crabs, though, I just want to say, Chris is so excited about the eels because I think we forget that New York City at its core is a city of islands. We're people, we're on land most of the time, but the Bronx is the only part of New York City that's actually part of the North American mainland. So New York City is over 500 miles of coastline. We have a very intimate relationship with the water. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that. So excited about talking about our waterways and the creatures who share the city with us. Horseshoe crabs being one of them, of course. And it's not quite a migration, but we do see them when each spring, so under the full moons of May and June, they return to the city shores in Brooklyn and Queens and the Bronx to spawn. And so this follows the high tides. They come ashore to mate. And this is something that horseshoe crabs have been doing for a really long time, before New York City even existed. So they're considered to be about 350 million years old. And then, so interestingly, their eggs are also really critical food source, connecting us to next month's discussion around migrating shorebirds, the red-knot birds. And so this, of course, links the city's coastal habitats to a vast ecological network. And then, interestingly, also in our summertime waterways, the city is also known to see a federally endangered sea turtle, Kemp's Ridley sea turtle, swim in our waterways. So what happens in New York City really affects larger ecological systems and migratory patterns.
Marielle, I love that you've brought this up, because all of these species that you've just mentioned are totally related to each other. You can do an absolute deep dive on the relationship between horseshoe crabs, eels, commercial fishing for eels, how we relate with horseshoe crabs and eels. And I also love your point out that that New York City is the city of islands. And I want to give a special shout out to our colleagues with the Department of Environmental Protection, who run one of our community science eel project sites on Staten Island. And they're out there every day helping to monitor these baby glass eels using volunteer hours and local students. And there's just such a great vibrancy about all of these animals and the reconnection of New York City's people residents with New York City's aquatic residents.
And we think it's a big deal, and it is, but we think it's a big deal that the United States is celebrating its 250th birthday this year. A little context, a little perspective on humans in the course of history that Marielle said. Horseshoe crabs have been doing this thing for 350 million years. And let's see what a listener is contributing to this. Greg in Dover Plains, you're on WNYC. Hi, Greg.
Hi, how you doing?
What you got?
Okay, so I got a couple questions. First question is, what's the technical difference between an eel and a lamprey?
Oh, excellent question. It turns out that eels and lampreys, although at first glance they may look similar, in terms of scientifically, they're actually pretty distantly related. Lampreys are a very, very old species of what we call fish. They don't have jaws. Their great ancestors evolved and split from regular fish many, many millions of years ago. And then eels are much more closely related to what we would call true fish or bony fish. Everything from your guppy to your salmon to your trout to that's more of the eel family. Both look similar, but we often see that in nature where different things will evolve to look similar because they're very good strategies to survive. So that eel-like, snake-like, lamprey-like shape works in a lot of different habitats.
Yeah. You know, Chris, you'll be happy to know, Marielle, I'm sure you will too, that we have a full board of calls. All 10 of our lines are lit, and it looks to me like every single one of them is calling with a question about eels. Whoever
Bring
thought
'em on.
that it would come to this on the Brian Lehrer Show? Mandy in North Jersey has one of those questions. Hi, Mandy.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Good.
I was just wondering, I'm a science teacher, and I'm dealing with oceanography right now, and I was looking for specific things to tell my kids about what physiological changes do the eels have to go through to adjust from their saltwater environment to this more coastal, more freshwater environment.
Beautiful question. And for you and all of the science teachers out there, we have got a full suite of eel-related lesson plans and classroom activities for you. If you go on to Hrner.org, HRNERR.org, that's for our National Estuarine Research Reserve, you can actually look up in our curriculum and unit lesson plans different American eel lessons that are actually organized by grade, organized by topic. And I'll also give a special shout out to our partners and colleagues in Pennsylvania that work on a program called Eels in the Classroom. You should check out their work as well. You'll get a lot of great stuff there, especially focused on these many cool changes through the eel life cycle. Those are really highlighted in those lesson plans.
Yeah, and we've got some links on our website, Brian Lehrer Show page at WNYC.org, to some of what Chris was just describing. Here's Mark on Staten Island. You're on WNYC. You're into this too, Mark, right?
I am very much into this. Thank you. Out here at Fresh Kills Park, the largest park in the city of New York, we are studying the horseshoes and the eels and everything else beautiful and wild for the New York City Department of Parks. And the Fresh Kills Park Alliance, the 501c3 not-for-profit, provides programming all summer long for kids. We're going to be doing horseshoe monitoring in May and June, and that can all be seen on our webpage, freshkillspark.org. The wonderful work you guys are doing and the education that's going on is so important, and we at Fresh Kills can't thank you all enough for continuing to do that work privately.
Cool, and I'm going to leave it there. Fresh Kills Park Alliance. We have one we're not going to have time for, from an educator at the Gowanus Canal Conservancy, where they say they get eels and horseshoe crabs. So that's amazing. But William in Westchester, I'm going to let you ask the last question because it's such a beautiful question. William, hi.
Hi. For those of the people out there who aren't going to delve into research on glass eels, could you describe the beauty of a glass eel?
Don't you love that, Chris? And you have about 15 seconds to do it.
Well, that's fantastic. So first of all, I love glass seals because the way the light refracts through them, they are nearly transparent. And if they catch the light just right, they scintillate with little mini rainbows. And the other thing that I find beautiful about them is that eels are a symbol of how all of our ecosystems are connected together. And those glass eels coming in from the ocean are a symbol of hope and connectivity across the entire world.
Chris Bowser, estuary educator extraordinaire for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and Cornell's Water Resource Institute. And thanks again, urban botanist and ecologist Marielle Anzelone. We'll talk to you again next month with part 2 of our look at spring migrations when we look up to birds and other flying creatures. Thanks both of you for coming on today in DL Wild NYC. Listeners, remember you can post your pictures of seasonal change, and they don't have to be about eels and horseshoe crabs. They can be about any springtime seasonal change to your Instagram stories. Just tag us at Brian Lehrer Show using the hashtag BLWild. Stay tuned for all of it.